for anybody that considers themselves a beginner or even intermediate, or you used to skate and now you're a dad in your 30s or 40s and you're kind of getting back into it and trying to like remember the tricks and like, figure it out again. That's perfect.
Right. Well, because also too with the radius, it's like it's got enough of a bump to like be able to feel the coping, you know?
Exactly.
Like that is like great starter, great learner. You can't really hang up. Doubles also on ledge, which is kind of a mute point, but this is like super beginner perfect, learning how to drop in and grind and ride. But then this one here is like, okay, enough of a bump, enough coping to feel what's going on.
There's enough of like almost a right angle for a more proper lock-in, whereas the 18-inch saw, yes, it's great for kids learning their first drop-ins. It's great for learning like a really stable rock and roll. It has way less of a hang-up factor. I started making that like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's been tweaked and perfected over the years. Like I think we used to do a different radius, and then we used to do like a different coping reveal and a different deck size and whatever. And we've landed on this.
That's what I meant, coping reveal.
Coping reveal, yeah. But in the last, 10 years of us selling the 2-foot quarter pipes, I've continued to learn new tricks on it.
Right.
Whereas on a bigger quarter pipe, I'm basically trying to just retain tricks that I have and I've already done.
Right.
I'm never like learning new tricks on it.
Right. Okay, so let's start here.
Clothes you want to declutter. Let me show you how easy it is to list them on Vinted. Just snap a photo and list in minutes. Easy, right? The buyer covers shipping, so there's no cost for you. And with 0 selling fees, you keep everything you earn. Download Vinted and list your first item today.
What time y'all open till?
2 times.
Okay, cause my boy, he about to get out of prison tonight. So we finna pull up like 25 of us.
Okay.
Yeah, just me and my homeboys and shit like that. He getting out of it, cause he was in that bit for triple homicide.
Oh, okay. Oh, so
Yeah.
And like you said, like.
So like, yeah, like 25. Yeah, like we was all like, probably like 7 p.m. He gonna get out around like 5, freshen up and shit like that.
Do you want to make a reservation or you want to just come down?
Yeah, you can put my ad down.
And then you said it was for how many people?
25. Yeah, what's up with her? What's up with you?
What's up with me?
Yeah, I saw you over there looking fine as hell.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for real. I like white girl. A little snow bunny season out here.
I can get you guys in at 8:15.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what's a good phone number for you?
817. Hey, you can take my number down too. Take notes if you want. Hit me up. Brian Wellington with a B.
And then last name?
Cause I got a big ass dick. What?
What's your last name?
Wellington. Yeah.
Okay, sir, we will see you guys tonight at 8:15.
And what was your name too?
We will see you tonight by.
You gonna be here tonight?
We'll see you.
You got me looking my chops, baby girl. Hey, can I get your number before you go? Hey, can I get your number before I go? You got a boyfriend? She said it can't be. She got a boyfriend? Damn. What about a man friend type shit? Damn. Alright then. Type shit. Trying to play that 2K tonight too. Nah, landlord tripping too. Hold on. This lady trying to talk to me, baby girl. No, send me that pussy pic. What?
Do you need some help?
Yeah, they talking about I need a job application in it.
No, we don't.
They hiring?
We're not hiring, no.
Y'all ain't do that?
No, at Faraday.
Cause they talking about they gonna keep me on damn house arrest like and shit like that. They gonna keep me on that shit till I start working consecutively 3 months.
Go to Vans.
Yeah, Vans, they're hiring across the way.
They hiring?
Yeah. We're not.
Oh, what's the pay like here? I'm trying to stack my bread type shit.
Yeah, no, we're not hiring.
Nah, for real. They had me in some messy shit at the last shoe store. I worked at a shoe store. And the dude came in talking about, get me these Jordans. And then, like, I'm like, we ain't got them in a size 10. So he gonna, like, go tell the manager that I'm giving him an attitude because I ain't giving him the Jordans, you know what I'm saying, in a size 10. I'm like, look, we ain't got that shit. But to be honest, I just didn't want to go look for that shit, even though we had it. So then he come up on me, and I three-piece him, and he knocked out unconscious on the floor. And then they arrested my ass on some bullshit. I couldn't help it though, like, I had to knock his ass out.
Most of the stores out here.
Yeah. They strict?
Online applications.
Oh, they do that shit? They do that shit?
Online. Oh, hold on, I have to take this back.
Yeah, for sure. What's up with him? What's up with him, homeboy? What's up, homeboy? Shit, I'm alright. I ain't gonna lie, it's a nice little area out here. I'm trying to go cop a, I was thinking about going to look at a Mercedes.
Yeah, no, almost all the
Yeah.
stores now, you have to apply online.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one does.
They don't do that shit in store?
No.
I'm old school. I got that old school respect.
I know.
Nah, cause I was done being locked up 10 years, so I just got out yesterday. So this like surreal to me, like cell phone and shit. I just got a cell phone and shit. And I started talking to I got 13 kids and shit. So I'm talking to them. They trying to FaceTime me. I'm like, motherfucker, I ain't got time for this shit.
Yeah, no.
I'm trying to get my life together. Yeah.
Almost every company, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
For real.
It's all online.
Alright then, who they? Cause they are fine as hell. I'm so sorry. You look good too. I ain't gonna lie, I don't wanna make you jealous. Nah, you are not old. You are young, baby. You look so young. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I used to work valet. I had got fired because one of these motherfuckers hit a Ferrari. Took that bitch on a joyride. Ended up on a high-speed pursuit with the cops.
That'll do it.
Did 8 months for that shit. Shit was fun as hell though. Totaled that bitch at the end.
Did you really?
Yeah, I totaled it, flipped it like around and around and around.
Yeah.
That shit was fun though, cause there's got helicopters chasing me. It's like some video game type shit.
No shit.
That was like one thing I wanted to check off on my to-do list in my life. Do some real hood rat shit like that. That was a fast ass car though.
Was it here?
Oh no, it was in Glendale.
You got the news footage? Because that'd be cool to have.
But that shit went viral. That shit went viral. I was like, what the fuck you not tagged me for on my Instagram? I would have got more followers.
You get a lot of followers.
I would have. Nah, but I get recognized sometimes.
Yeah.
They had me trying to, cause I just got out too. Just got out, house arrest type shit. Yeah, that shit ain't too bad, but I was trying to apply for a job in there, and they was like, nah, we can't hire you, cause one of my last jobs, one of the damn managers, he had walked in on me. I was raw dogging this customer in the storeroom.
Okay.
She was bad.
to start this video by quoting Amit, where he said, "For a guy who speaks for a living, I'm completely speechless because this might single-handedly be the greatest earnings report I have read ever in my life." And I'm not saying that to exaggerate. I say that from a point of looking at these numbers, and they were unbelievable. To give you just the tip of the iceberg, revenue growth for FICO this quarter, by their own projections, was supposed to grow at 19%. Now, nobody believes them because they always sandbag earnings because they want to try to beat those earnings. The average consensus estimates for FICO this quarter was that their revenue growth would be, I believe, about 23 or 24%. I should just show you. They came in at 39% revenue growth. 39. And mind you, this is during a quarter where it's a non-stop barrage of negative sentiment. I think the stock is down, God knows how much, 20, 30, 40% this past quarter. The stock is non-stop been trading down. Yeah, the stock's down 30% over the past quarter, right? And
¿Qué
it's been a
opinamos?
non-stop barrage of Vantage
¿Entendieron
Score, who's going to take market share. They push their pricing
la
power too
lectura?
much.
Amén.
FHFA is
Gracias,
heavily bet up,
Esmeralda.
and this is the quarter that they
Gracias.
deliver. Single-handedly, I think, is the greatest quarter that I've ever seen out of any company. With that being said, welcome back. My name is Arya, and as you might know, I don't waste your time. And so with that out of the way, let us jump into the earnings report where we take a look at, quite literally, the greatest earnings report I've ever seen. As I mentioned a second ago here, they came in at 39% revenue growth, which is just unheard of. Net income grew, earnings per share grew, all that stuff was just absolutely fantastic. You know, you often see a line in these earnings reports where it's like, oh, we continue to deliver strong revenue and earnings growth. Yeah, no kidding. You continue to deliver unbelievably just disgusting numbers. Now, of course, the primary driver of those revenues was their scores segment, not necessarily their software segment. They do have a smaller software segment that accounts for 20% of revenues, but that's largely irrelevant as the scores business for them. The entire scores business for them grew 60% year over year, and the B2B revenues, which is like the most important part of the business, grew 72%, primarily attributable to a higher mortgage origination scores unit price and an increase in volume of mortgage originations. Part of this report, part of the expectation going into this quarter, was that we're going to see a bunch of refinancing with mortgages coming out of roughly, the 2021 period. It's been roughly 5 years later. We should see higher scores volume. I did not anticipate that it would be this massive. I mean, nobody anticipated it would be this massive. And to kind of like demonstrate this to you, like to visually show this to you, I think the best way to do that is to go over to Fiscal AI and plot a handful of these different charts here. So as I mentioned a second ago, the part of the business that drives the majority of the earnings, that drives the majority of the incremental revenue growth is this B2B sports segment. As you can see, it has been consistently growing, 30, 40% thereabouts. And it looks like a data glitch. That's what it honestly looks like. It looks like this is an error. It looks like an error in the graph that it grew this fast, 72%. You would imagine, maybe they squeeze in the 40 to 45% range, something in that ballpark. To put it bluntly, I'm genuinely speechless. FICO stock in after hours is only up 12%, which in my opinion is very much undershooting just how fantastic these earnings were. To add insult to injury, when they came in with the guidance, they beat and raised on every single one of those metrics as well. So they raised on the revenue estimate, they raised on GAAP net income, they raised on GAAP earnings per share. The whole thing, every single thing across the board, they raised and they beat on all expectations. Something I actually haven't looked because I haven't had a chance yet. Operating margins also climbed to 50%. We're now entering the territory of Visa and MasterCard in terms of capital efficiency for this business. They have 88% incremental operating margins on the core business. And I think I'd like to take a moment to reiterate this point that I've made across all the YouTube videos on this channel for God knows how long. The biggest plague in all of investing is that people follow price. What I mean by that is when a stock price declines, all of a sudden the business seems to be troubled, and all of a sudden there's question marks around whatever it is that they're doing with big tech all the time. It's not an issue for Meta to spend $100 billion on CapEx or spend $20, $30 billion to acquire this like AI startup. All those things are completely fine when the stock is making new all-time highs, right? As soon as the stock declines by any meaningful amount, call it even 20%, there's a whole bunch of question marks that are raised on whether the strategy of that company is correct and whether all these different initiatives that they have at the company are value accretive to shareholders. The same exact thing has applied to FICO over the past year. When they're at $2,000 per share, they're crushing it. It's a monopoly. It's the widest moat in the world. Defcan Tessaria has 30% of his portfolio in it. All these different great things about the business, right? As soon as the stock price declines, there's question marks about it. It's they raise their pricing power too much. It's the same exact catalyst, by the way. Same exact things that they were getting praised for. Now they're getting shunned for it simply because the stock price has moved. And so I sit here in front of you to reiterate this point, to follow the fundamentals of the business. Don't ever just blindly look at the stock price and come to a conclusion from there. Almost never is there an instance where the stock price is truly reflective of what's happening with the underlying business. You have to look at the underlying business to know what is happening with the underlying business. And case in point with something like this, again, you have something like Adobe as well, which nowhere even close to this in terms of severity, but that's a business that is currently accelerating the revenue growth, and yet the stock is in the dumpster. With that being said, before we jump over and make some more projections, I did also want to show the valuation chart of the business. This is something that I've been tweeting out recently as well, but even now, after the jump, even if we say, this goes up by 20%, whatever the case is, you're still looking at, like a high 20s earnings multiple for the business. They've historically, over the past decade, averaged a 35 times EBIT multiple. So even after this point, you have a business that is now at its peak margins. It's at its fastest growing, I think, literally ever in its history. It has never grown faster than what it's currently growing at. And the business is trading below its average earnings multiple over the past decade, right?
It's time to check in, presented by Marriott Bonvoy, and let's give out some superlatives. Guys, everybody loves grace, but everybody loves steals. Ben, give me a steal.
Ruben Bain at 15 to the Buccaneers. The last Buccaneers pass rusher to have more than 10 sacks was Shaquille Barrett in 2019, brother. It's been 7 years. Now, Ruben Bain fell because of the arm length, right? It's under 31 inches. It's historically low for an edge rusher. I get that. You turn on the tape and you see a guy who is so excellent at working around his deficiencies. He uses those short levers to get underneath tackles, get into their armpits, get into their chest, knock them off the ground. He's got counter rush moves. He's got enough bend. He's got first step quickness. He's got speed to power. You can tell Jason Taylor molded this guy like clay, and he blossomed there at the end of the season. You saw the light bulb come on for Ruben Bain. He's going to be an impactful run defender as well. Very important for a Todd Bowles defense. I'm telling you, Ruben Bain is going to be that edge rusher the Buccaneers have been hunting for years.
I'm going with Mekhi Littman, wide receiver to the Philadelphia Eagles at number 20. You're talking about a guy who can catch and run with the football, force missed tackles, tough going over the middle of the football field as well, but can be a guy in your return game that can make an instant impact. I love what the Philadelphia Eagles have done going and trading up with the Dallas Cowboys to get Mekhi Littman. That tells me that they're going to trade A.J. Brown, and a new era has started in Philadelphia with Mekhi Littman.
Now, guys, we're going to go best fit here. Obviously, best fit doesn't mean the best pick, but the pick that you saw where you're like, yes, that makes a ton of sense to me. Ben, which was the best fit that stuck out to you in round one?
Caleb Downs at 11 to the Dallas Cowboys.
There you go.
Christian Parker's the new defensive coordinator there. That's a Vic Fangio defense. We're going to ask our safeties to do everything, and they need to do it at a high, high level. Now, they have some veterans there. Jalen Thompson, free agency, Malik Hooker. They didn't need a safety. But when you're there at 12 and they trade up to 11 to go get him, and you see a field general like this, you see a math-changing player, multiple anticipatory plays on every single film where he is making impact where other players will not make impact because the football IQ is so high. He was a freshman starter at Alabama for Nick Saban. Matt Patricia built the whole defense around him in Ohio State, putting him in the middle of the field. Christian Parker is a young ascending defensive coordinator with the Cowboys. He is going to build the defense around Caleb Downs, and I'm telling you, Downs is going to be yet another one of these safeties who falls in the NFL draft, and we're all looking back in a couple years like, how did this guy get that far down?
I think it's safe to say Ohio State had a lot of talent, huh?
Yeah, pretty good team, man.
All right.
Because my pick is Sonny Styles. I'm going Ohio State
pick,
linebacker, a
great
guy
pick.
who's very, very athletic. And the reason why I'm pointing him out is because you look at their head coach and what he's been able to do over the years. Ben, when they get to these 3-by-1 sets against opposing teams' offense, right, and you have a speedy wide receiver or a very athletic tight end, what is that linebacker asked to do? He has to carry that guy, number 3, over the field. Well, guess what you need? You need a guy when the athleticism is off the charts. That's why you go get linebacker Sonny Styles. I love what the Washington Commanders also have done in free agency. They went and got from Kansas City, Leo Chenal, Kayvon Chazon from New England, also Odafe Oweh, who came over from the Los Angeles Chargers. This defense is revamped in Washington. That's why I'm high on them winning the division next
Dan
year.
Quinn said one thing all offseason: we need speed on defense. How about 4.46 at 240
Hello.
pounds from Sonny Styles?
That'll
Speed
work.
on defense.
But one more time for the people that's listening. When it's a 3-by-1 set and you have a speedy wide receiver at number 3 or athletic tight end, what must that linebacker do?
That 6'4" ex-safety linebacker's got to run with that.
They got to
speed
run across the
receiver.
field with that receiver, that very athletic tight end, Sonny Styles, right there with the Washington Commanders at 7. I love it.
Hard to argue against it. Now, let's go the other way, and let's go the biggest reach. In fact, let's try something here. On 3, biggest reach. 1, 2, 3.
Ty Simpson.
All right, who wants to go first?
I showed you on the board why you like it, Ty Simpson.
Yeah.
I'll give you the bear case here, which is He doesn't have elite NFL size. He doesn't have elite NFL arm. He doesn't have elite NFL mobility. And typically when we're talking about round one quarterbacks, we're talking about elite traits. Now, you might be sitting at home saying, I watched Bo Nix go 12 in the Denver Broncos, and they would have been in the Super Bowl if he didn't get hurt. And that's true, but think about the Broncos super team around him. Think about how good that defense is. Think about how good that offensive line has been. You want to draft quarterbacks in the top half of the first round that are going to take you there. They're going to be the horse pulling the wagon, not the wagon being pulled by the horse. Quarterbacks you win because of, not that you win with. Simpson to me has a Mac Jones, Brock Purdy, Bo Nix career ahead of him. He is a quarterback you win with. I don't love spending the 13th overall pick on that player. I understand spending pick 31, getting the 5th year option, not 13 overall.
My reasoning is going to be when you're going for the gusto, you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you feel some type of way that Seattle Seahawks, a team in your own division that you felt like you probably should have beaten the NFC Championship game, won a Super Bowl. Well, go add a player that can have an instant impact for 2026. Don't add a player that you're probably going to play in 2027 or 2028. You need every player that you may need. Look, you addressed your biggest deficiency, in my opinion. That was the secondary. You went and got 2 guys from Kansas City. You shored that up. Add another player on your defensive line. Add another player, the linebacker group, like Ben mentioned earlier, or to your offensive line. Don't take a quarterback. I'm not saying I hate it. I think they're in win now mode, trying to go get another Super Bowl before Matthew Stafford calls it quits.
And you see this tweet here.
Simple as that. By the way, all these different charts that you've seen me use, these are on Fiscal AI, which you can get a 2-week free trial, no card required, using the link in the description down below. They had all these different metrics available to us literally within, I think it was 5 to 10 minutes of the earnings being reported. It's the only place on the internet where you're able to get those numbers other than the actual filings of these companies. And especially doing earnings report, super valuable to actually have access to all those numbers right here on the platform and be able to visually represent them. So again, you have nothing to lose, 2-week free trial, no card required, using the link in the description down below. If we take a look at my portfolio as of today as well, it is only, unfortunately, a 6% position. I did recently add to this maybe about a month or 2 ago. I slightly trimmed my ASML position, which is now roughly flat down from that point. FICO's down a lot more than that. I think this earnings report just very much so reaffirms the fact that this company is disgustingly undervalued. It's just simple as that. It's trading below its historical averages, and it's growing at its fastest growth rate ever. In the earnings call as well, they came in and they said that on the securitization side of things, they don't expect that VantageScore is going to get any sort of meaningful traction. Yet again, reaffirms my thesis with the business, that the moat is as sound as ever. If you're curious to see whether or not I'm actually adding to the business, there's a link for Blossom in the description down below that you can check out as well. With that being said, just to run some very quick projections. I had previously put down the revenue growth rate at 18%, which some people were kind of questioning that, whether or not they'd be able to achieve something like that. I think it's more than evidence that on a going forward basis, at least, this business can easily achieve 20% plus revenue growth. If not, we might even be undershooting it, right? 50% operating margins, that's quite literally flat operating margins. At the moment, the business trading at 23 times earnings multiple. On the low end here, you're still ending up with a 20% CAGR with the business over the next 5 years. At the same time, if you see any sort of re-rating with the company, any sort of re-rating of that multiple, you're looking at well north of a 30% annual return with this business on a going forward basis. You're looking at roughly a $4,000 stock, call it by the year 2030, or actually 2031. Let's adjust that really quickly. But yeah, by the year 2031, you're still looking at, 30% CAGR on a going forward basis. It should be noted that, these projections of mine, these are quite literally, that's what they are. They are projections just to give you a range of outcomes if it were to trade at that valuation ratio with that growth rate. Not financial advice, as always, all that great stuff. With that being said, let me know what you thought of the earnings report. Be sure to read some of the comments in the description down below. Again, I am speechless. Thanks for watching and have a great day.
Search and play Blockbreaker in the Google app. Just type Blockbreaker to get into the game. Bouncing balls and blasting bricks, level after level, right in the Google app. Search, play, repeat. Download the Google app.